Hello and welcome to Moderate Fantasy Violence, a podcast about pop culture and the world around it. I'm Alistair.
And I'm Nick.
And in today's sort of Christmas special, we'll be trying to bring Christmas cheer to an alien planet in the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special, and then having our consciousness embodied in a post-apocalyptic future in the Peripheral. But before all of that, Nick, do you have something to recommend to our listeners?
It's not exactly a Christmassy thing, but basically, long-term listeners may remember, but around this time last year, I started watching acclaimed premium telly darling, The Americans, the show about a couple who are secretly KGB spies during the tail end of the Cold War, and them raising their two unaware children and trying to get on with their, incredibly dangerous spy missions alongside their domestic life in American suburbia, and also dealing with the fact that an FBI agent has just moved in across the road. And about a year ago I watched the first couple of seasons of that, and after a whole year, with many breaks to watch various things for the podcast, or just because I wanted to, I have finally finished all 6 seasons of The Americans. Not coming with me into 2023, thank God. But surprising no one, considering this regularly appears on, best ever TV show lists or best TV shows of the 21st century lists and so on. This is really good. It's very sort of slow and deliberate, and it is kind of like reading 6 quite deliberately paced spy novels. And, I'm not necessarily sad that I took a bit of a break between seasons for all of them, because, it might maybe get a bit slow if you change it all. But there's a very good, deliberate sense of reality to it. I think at least one of the guys who showran it has worked in the trade at some point, and there's a lot of very good, interesting detail. There's a lot of fun, silly disguises, but mostly it's the characterization. It's basically a character study of this couple and their sort of them trying to keep this secret, and how their faith in their country and their mission waxes and wanes as the years roll on. And it becomes very, very involving by the time you get to the wrenching final couple of moments in the last episode, which, unlike other shows about secret identities, like, say, the original final series of Dexter, does actually pay off the things you wanted to pay off, and actually have the supporting cast confronting the people about their secret. It's really good. The last episode was really, really, really good. I was on tenterhooks throughout. I was on a bed of nails. So shocking no one, this show is really good. It's all on Disney Plus in the UK if you're so inclined.
So does it consistently maintain the quality throughout? Are there seasons that are better than others?
It almost feels like the seasons kind of work in pairs. There's a lot of build-up in season 1, looks like a quite slow, deliberate build-up, and then a lot of payoff and action in season 2, and then something kind of similar happens across seasons 3 and 4, and then 5 and 6. So it continues that sort of hump, and sometimes you sort of get to the end of the odd number seasons, and there isn't necessarily as much of a huge action showdown. You're a bit sort of, oh, was that it? But and then it usually pays off pretty hard, because there's usually a lot of big things happening in the next one.
That's an interesting structure. I guess the spy novel comparison sounds quite good, because I've always thought, that a lot of times a TV series is more like a novel than, say, a film is like a novel, in that it's in installments. It's usually a longer scope for storytelling and builds to major climax. Like spy novels or whatever that come in series, like Jack Ryan novels or the Smiley novels, I suppose there's each volume can be translated into a series.
And each episode is a chapter, I guess. Something like that. Not that this is based on novels, but And there's something very, deliberate and carefully thought out about it. It's not very casual about its use of violence. This isn't the show where the kick-ass spy heroes murder 17 people an episode for no real reason other than because it's cool and never look back or feel bad about it. There's a certain amount of weight to it when these people kill someone, even when it gets to the last few seasons. They have, between them, racked up a fairly large body count.
So it's not 24, basically.
Yes, basically. It's not 24, it's not James Bond, it's not that level of spy work. Which, I'm not implicitly dissing those things. I have watched and enjoyed those things in my life, but this is not that.
There's kind of really almost 2 different spy genres. There's what's sometimes described as being a super spy, which is like James Bond, which is he's kind of a bit more like a superhero. He's got gadgets and he's got ridiculous villains, and it's kind of less believable. And then there's kind of believable spy things, again, you mentioned the Smiley novels, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, obviously, The Americans, Spooks in its more sane seasons.
Spooks, if anything, sort of vacillated between the 2 poles, didn't it? There were some episodes where it really seemed to want to be a proper, well-researched spy show about spycraft, and other episodes where it just wanted to go James Bond and blow shit up.
And obviously there are properties that sit on the borderline, things like that. Again, James Bond has some of its, trying to be more down-to-earth moments, the early Craig ones, the Dalton ones, for example, when the enemies are just gun runners or things like that. But it does sound like this is very much in the latter camp of something that's supposed to be taken seriously as something that could have happened.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of thought about the long term of it. Like, a lot of the jobs of the main characters aren't necessarily, breaking into bases or whatever. It's a lot of it is about, maintaining relationships with these different sources under fake identities and, befriending them over a long period of time and trying to get them to do things or manipulate them or occasionally just destroy their lives so that you can blackmail them. And, every so often they make the mistake of getting too attached to one of them and they feel bad about it and so on. And, again, it's very wrenching at times. Sometimes you do feel properly shit when our anti-heroes decide to ruin another person's life so that they can blackmail them to steal something from a factory.
I mean, that does sound like a great source of drama. I can see why that would make compelling TV.
Yeah, no, it's a great show. I agree. I did obviously take a year to watch it, as I say, because it's a very deliberately paced, and occasionally I just need the sugar rush of, I don't know, someone blowing something up. But yeah, no, as everyone says, this is a very good show. I'm glad I watched it. I don't know what my next massive, year-long TV project will be. I'll let you know when I've decided.
Sopranos or something like that.
Maybe. Part of me feels like it's always too similar to The Americans, but then again, I think a lot of these shows are just sort of crimey, aren't they? Yep, there we go. The Americans, it's a good time. Alistair, what have you been consuming?
I've got a sort of Christmas recommendation, but it's an oblique one. So, I have been watching the 3rd season of Lars von Trier's The Kingdom, which has been titled The Kingdom Exodus. Although, according to everywhere on the internet, it's not a new show called The Kingdom Exodus. It's just the 3rd season, but it's got a different title.
Like Doctor Who Flux.
Yes, like Doctor Who Flux, yeah, or Twin Peaks The Return. And in fact, very much like Twin Peaks The Return, this is picking up, a very strange story set in a very strange world 25 years after the 2nd season. And Lars von Trier's been open that The Kingdom was his response to Twin Peaks. So I guess this is his response to Twin Peaks The Return. And it's as crazy as ever. There aren't many returning cast members. Quite a few have died in between. Although, yeah, there are several who've come back. The Porter is back. Some of the younger doctors are still in it. But what he's added this time is there's a whole meta level in which Lars von Trier's show The Kingdom is a show within this new series, Kingdom Exodus. So it begins with, a woman who finishes watching The Kingdom, puts the DVD away, then is possessed by some kind of spirit or supernatural being, and then goes to the hospital and checks herself in, and then the plot goes from there. However, also the other main character is the son of the main doctor from the initial season, so it's both real and a story within a story in the universe, which is just adding another level of weirdness onto something that was already pretty strange to start with. The other thing is it's all set in the build-up to Christmas in the hospital, so there's lots of Christmas decorations and things involving, the build-up to Christmas going on.
Yeah, we covered The Kingdom, didn't we? Well, you recommended it to me as part of our occasionally returning recommendation section back in the day.
Yes, and you watched, the original 8 episodes. I think, it's 2 seasons of 4 episodes each.
Yes, I will probably watch Exodus at some point. It sounds like it'll be an interesting time. The Kingdom was nothing if not interesting.
Yeah, it throws a lot of stuff out there. For some reason, they have this bizarre thing where everyone keeps complaining about how bad the TV show was in this show. I'm not really sure what Von Trier's doing with that.
Is he satirising his critics in true bitter style?
I think he might be, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that sounds like Lars von Trier. It's still got the same, weirdness, possessed hospital, strange things going on, elements of the kind of supernatural and the sort of, irrational breaking through into the rational world of science and medicine. It's still very, very much a theme. So, you scratch the surface of our rational world and you get chaos and strangeness beneath it. It's still shot in the sort of Dogme 95 style, so with natural lighting, handheld cameras, all of that sort of stuff. They've also managed to get celebrity cameos this time. I guess the infamy of the show means that people want to be in it now. So William Dafoe is in it.
Cannot say I feel fully surprised that Willem Dafoe is somebody who wants to turn up in this.
Yeah. He turns up, and Alexander Skarsgård's in one episode. It's good. It's all on Mubi. That's coming out once a week. There's 3 episodes out now. There'll be a 4th one out by the time this podcast drops. And if you're a fan of The Kingdom, definitely watch this because it's just as good as it was. If you've always been interested by The Kingdom, they're all on Mubi right now. So if you subscribe to Mubi, we don't get money for trying to sell you Mubi, but anyway, it's all up there. You can watch the whole thing, including the new ones.
Plus loads of random movies.
Yes, although not that many because that's their shtick. Anyway, we're not selling Mubi. I can't believe they did another season of this, considering the 3rd season that they planned to do back in the 90s was cancelled because I think several cast members died after the filming of season 2. But they've managed to actually make it work as a sequel. Again, bringing some people back 25 years later, introducing some new characters. So similar to how I Can't Believe Twin Peaks The Return worked. I can't believe this works, but it does.
Excellent. I probably will need to watch that at some point, yeah. Okay, and first up today, it's The Peripheral, a new streaming series from Amazon, adapted from the novel of the same name by William Gibson. This is the story of Flynn, a young woman who makes some money side hustling by playing video games for people and basically racking up high scores for them, and then one day gets sent a new game to test, which turns out to be a strange new VR world, the likes of which she's never seen before. And this being a sort of cyberpunk thriller, she soon finds herself thrust into a high-tech conspiracy. And there's some other twists as well. So, we've seen the whole of the first season of this. We may do some spoilers later, but we'll try not to for the moment. Alistair, what did you think of this?
Yeah, so it's interesting that cyberpunk seems to be having a bit of a moment. There was a sort of fallow period, I feel, after The Matrix's enormous popularity kind of sucked all the oxygen out of the genre. Yeah, there's been a sort of range of cyberpunk stuff recently. There's Westworld, who the people behind that are also behind this show. There was Cyberpunk 2077 video game, and the sort of anime spin-off TV show Cyberpunk Edge Runners. There's a new Blade Runner. But I feel with The Peripheral, this is a bit more of cyberpunk going back to its roots, in that it's adapted from, as you say, William Gibson, kind of one of the, grandees of cyberpunk. Someone who there hasn't been that many really successful high-profile adaptations of his work, so that was very reassuring. And it's got that kind of, in essence, cyberpunkness of, high-tech, low-life. Some bits of this are more like a crime show, in that it takes place in a sort of a rural, small town in the rural south. There's local gangsters, there's nasty people up to bad stuff, as well as this, kind of entwined into this conspiracy involving technology and the rich and the powerful. So it's got the kind of, the crime element woven through the kind of sci-fi tech element to it as well. And it all comes together really well. It's just kind of quite a gripping thriller. Each episode is a sort of tense unit of storytelling. So I certainly really enjoyed this.
Yeah, no, it's got a good sort of driving, propulsive thriller plot. It's not quite as... I really liked Westworld. I am the person who liked Westworld. It's been cancelled, RIP. But, this is, although from the same producers, I think interestingly different from Westworld, in that Westworld, I think, didn't necessarily feel like it had a quite as tight and propulsive a plot, because it was often sort of circling what's actually happening. Whereas this show, although it does have reveals and revelations and twists as it goes, does always feel like we're, firing pneumatically forward along the plot. I don't know, it's not really that concerned with taking hours to make you like the characters or feel incredible empathy towards them, although it is hard not to like Chloe Grace Moretz, who's doing a lot just on sheer everyman likability as the main character Flynn. But it's far more interested in sort of the plot and the concepts, and I think it just hits the right level of complexity. The ideas are layered on top of each other in an interesting way. There's a main twist, which I won't... it's in episode 2, so I'm not sure how big a main twist it really qualifies as, but I won't spoil it yet. And that's, it's an interesting idea, if only because I knew nothing about this going in, so it was actually quite an interesting, this is not the sort of show I thought it was, type moment for me. And, and then from there it goes on to, bring in ideas about class, there's some fun stuff about the military. It becomes, as Alistair said, a bit more of a crime show than you might have expected. Things come together in this sort of inevitable converging on each other. Do me, oh no, it's going to go wrong way. And it works really well. It's very good, tight, controlled plotting.
There's usually a sort of revelation each episode or something that propels the plot forward, but I guess there's quite a few different plot threads to it as well. There's the virtual world that Flynn sort of goes into, and that's kind of the main plot, which is interesting that the virtual world she goes into is London, and they do a really good job, I think, of contrasting, and it's supposed to be sort of London in the future, in that this virtual world it's high tech. There's these enormous classical statues stroke skyscrapers that are 3 times the size of the Shard that just kind of dominate London in a sort of very strange way in this world. And they do a really good job of contrasting how London, everything's very sleek and neat and precise and clean and stuff, and then there's urban, and then there's this rural world that they inhabit, of sort of small town Americana, and the kind of the contrast between that I think works quite well. And then there's a plot thread involving Flynn's brother, Burton, and he was in the army, and there's a couple of decades in the future, so he and his buddies were fixed with electronic devices that kind of merge their sort of thoughts and feelings and stuff, and they're kind of connected on some level. There's an interesting plot line involved them, especially one of their member was very seriously wounded and is now sort of depressed. And there's other things. There's Flynn has a relationship with character Wilf, who she meets in the virtual world, and he's looking for his lost sister. So there's all these different plot threads. There's quite a bit of plot to it, and you usually get a revelation on 1 or 2 of these each episode. Similar to what you're saying about The Americans, it is based on a novel, and there's kind of a novel's worth of plot across this season. And also similar to what I was saying about The Americans, that it's the first of a series of novels, so they've got more scope.
Yeah, but I'm not familiar with William Gibson's novels, to be honest. I've never read one, but there's a good sense of him bringing in this sort of very big, weird tech ideas and then thinking through and working out quite cleverly and interestingly how it actually spills into people's lives. Big ideas are thrown around and they become casually used. Like, it's interesting that inevitably, once the big ideas come in, they start getting used by the local crime lord for local crime, inevitably. So yeah, it's interestingly thought through on a sci-fi level.
Yeah, I mean, Gibson's always been a writer, I think, that has been focused on tech's effect on people. And, how it changes our humanity, which is, I guess, a very cyberpunk thing. Well, certainly for the kind of the good cyberpunk, there's like some that just basically like cyberpunk's an excuse to have like cool guns and in motorbikes and things. And then there's more like, how does tech change us or even stop us being human? And that's very much here in this. You think about the effects of technology also on society. There's various things about how kind of the future is shaped by technology, but yeah, as you say, it's always linked back to characters and it's always kept very much focused on these people. So even though it's dealing with lofty ideas, it still kind of remains sort of grounded, I guess.
Well, yeah, like there's the inevitable angle that the tech will be used for like warfare, basically.
Yeah.
But because several of the supporting cast are soldiers suffering with varying levels of PTSD, it's quite easy for them to bring that in.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And there are other elements of how technology can be used to benefit people. There's some people who they do 3D printing and then they're able to print technology from this future environment. And then there's a plot line involving Flynn and Burton's mother who's unwell, and they kind of use that technology to, it appears, create a cure for her. And again, it's just looping back to the kind of the human impact of technology.
Yeah, just to get the minor spoiler out the way, since we've now hinted at it a few times. So I guess, if you're planning on watching the Peripheral and want to go in pure, we're going to spoil a big-ish revelation, which is revealed as early as episode 2, so, maybe not a huge end of season twist, but still. Yeah, it turns out that when Flynn plugs into this VR headset she's been sent, she's not just going into a virtual world, she's going into the actual future. Or at least a possible future. Or possibly a future in which she is just one possible past. It turns out it's not just a sort of virtual reality show, it's also a time travel show. That's kind of the gimmick in a way. Yeah,
which again is quite true to cyberpunk in that there's usually this undercurrent of weirdness or occult or something like strange going on. For a genre that's ostensibly about technology and its impact on people, again, there's always this element of something like irrational or strange going on. And yeah, I thought this works well as a twist. It's partly because it helps you empathise with the characters in the virtual world that she's going into. It turns out to be the future, because you wouldn't really care so much about them if they lived or died or the things that they want if you thought they were just characters in a computer game.
Well, yeah, I guess that's why they get that revelation out there fairly quickly. And, as the season goes along, I don't feel any need to spoil the actual ending, but there is more and more of the sort of time travel becoming a major plot point. A bit more sort of weird time stream stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's revealed quite early on that only information can travel through time, not physical things. So her consciousness can go to a machine body in the future that it's then embodied in, which is called a peripheral, which is where the title comes from. It also means there's obviously some quite cool G'd up fight sequences when there's more characters in these like machine bodies. But because technology can travel across the barrier, it means that the people in the future can, for example, send money to the past to hire nasty hitmen to have Flynn killed, or it means they can send through designs for technology and weapons that can be 3D printed. So yeah, there is that element of, even though the show's primary timeline, which Flynn's from, is our future, and there's some future tech like this soldier mind meld thing, then there's also tech coming from further in the future to disrupt things.
Yeah, they don't bring in, further time travel or anything. They haven't yet had them come back to our time, which they probably won't, as that seems like a really bad idea. Yeah, they bring in the idea of different timelines and how they diverge from each other, and it sort of builds very slowly and interestingly, and in a way that, you just sort of get more and more into the thick of it as you go along, which is quite cleverly done. Again, not dissimilar to Westworld, but Westworld was a bit more, pretentious and magic tricky. It was a bit more keen to withhold as much from you as possible so it could drip feed it to you, whereas the Peripheral doesn't feel like it's doing that quite as ostentatiously, which it might be why less people find it annoying.
Yeah, I think also because they're following a book. I don't know how close they are stuck to the book, because I've not read this particular novel, although I do want to read it now that I've seen the TV version, but I don't know if they're sticking to the outline of a book and kind of dropping the revelations as the book did. Whereas obviously Westworld, they took a previous film, made it into a TV show, so obviously they added more.
Yeah, I've not seen the original film of Westworld either, but I gather it was quite an extensive elaboration compared to the original feature film. Whereas this, it does feel quite novelistic. Yeah, it's quite slow and deliberate, and as you said, similar to what I said about the Americans, things are sort of build steadily along this line. And there's enough characters for them to sort of slowly build out the cast, so that by the end, you find yourself, knowing what everyone's allegiances are and caring a little about to various side characters who have just sort of briefly appeared by episode 2. I guess it's immersive, I suppose. Much like you're playing the VR game yourself, you will just sort of get slowly sucked in.
Yeah. No, that's a good way of describing it and things. Yeah, and you do find yourself get very invested, even in like the minor characters, and like including the characters in the future. There's this group of people who work for a Russian billionaire who's one of the crime lord stroke, I don't know, high society man of future cyberpunk London. Yeah, and then there's, even like the people in his entourage, you kind of understand each character, what their deal is, and, at points when they're threatened, you kind of really feel for them. So yeah, it does a good job of making all these characters believable. I think a lot of that also comes down to the performances. Yeah, as you mentioned, Chloe Grace Moretz, the main character, she's very good in this. She was good in Mother Android, which is another slightly cyberpunky thriller that came out this year. That's a film. I also thought that Ellie Gore, who played the soldier who's lost both his legs and one of his arms in the war, was very good playing a man who's just really messed up from his experiences.
Yeah, he was good. I thought Jack Rayner as Finn's brother Burton. A character who at first seems like he's going to be kind of one-dimensional, but actually does become quite nuanced and interesting as things going on.
Yeah. No, that's true, yeah. So they've got a strong cast, and I think that really helps you empathise with the characters. That as well as the writing, there is, the actors are bringing a lot to this.
Yeah, so yeah, this is good solid premium telly. It really sucks you in. There's no word on a second season yet, so I don't know if they're going to cancel this in the same year as Westworld. Hopefully not.
That'd be harsh. Yeah. There's a lot of scope to develop this, obviously. There's a lot of plot to fill in. And there's quite a rich world here. I like the fact that the big event that took place between Flynn's time and the time of cyberpunk future London is something called the jackpot, which is basically 3 massive disasters coming up at the same time. A la when you spin a wheel in a slots gambling and 3 sevens come up and you hit the jackpot. And they are, I think, something like environmental collapse, economic collapse, and like war. There's this sense, they are trying to make a point about our society that we're headed for an absolute disaster between rising conflicts, economic disruption, and the collapse of the environment. And there is something eerie about how future London is so empty and quiet, and it's revealed that even though a lot of the people you see are actually computer projections, they're artificial people, just to make the few living human beings left in future London not feel quite so alone. I think there is a real statement here, so I would prefer them to have more seasons to really develop that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a decent ending at the end of this, such as it is. It doesn't massively leave you hanging, but there is a cliffhanger, I guess, or at least a jumping off point for future stories. Although there's also a post-credits scene, which I must admit I found quite odd.
Yeah, it's quite a long one.
It's quite a long one. I don't know. I've just been ruined by Marvel films, I guess. I'm used to my post-credit scenes being a bit more obviously, holy shit, this changes everything, and it was just sort of a vaguely sinister scene.
There's no reason why that scene couldn't have been in the main plot.
It didn't really, massively change my perceptions of the ending or add an exciting new complication, really.
It opened a new plot thread for the second season, which is that, the nasty Russian billionaire whose tech empire is what's allowing people to travel from the past to the future. He's decided that he's not having this anymore and wants all the people involved killed off. So it's shaping up the next series when the unpleasant, creepy benefactor guy is now going to be a villain. But there's no reason why that should be a post-credit scene. That could have quite easily just been a scene towards the end of the last episode, a la most shows do scenes towards the end of the last episode of a season, setting up what the plot threads for the next season are going to be. I guess it's only because post-Marvel, everyone loves a post-credit sequence.
We do. We do love a post-credit sequence. There wasn't one in the Guardians special either, actually.
No, that's true.
Not designed as a segue, but we might as well take it.
I was about to say, and now.
Okay, and last up today, it's the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special, our token moments of Christmas content. In this very special 45-minute presentation, Mantis and Drax decide to try and bring some Christmas spirit to Peter Quill, after they notice he's a bit down after that whole weird thing in the last Avengers films where Gamora died and was replaced by her own alternate self or something. So they travel to Earth to kidnap Kevin Bacon for him, as you do. We have seen this special, which is of course a lead-in to the upcoming third and final Guardians film. Alistair, what did you think of it?
So, we've talked a lot on the podcast about how there's this Marvel sauce that they put on everything, their kind of their flavour, which is, it's funny, it's got some action bits. This is on show here, it is both funny and has some good action scenes, although a bit lower budget than previous Guardians of the Galaxy adventures. I feel there's a very distinct Guardians of the Galaxy flavour to the Marvel sauce, which they've perfected over the last 2 films in that it is really funny, which they have here. Yeah, there's some great stuff, especially between Thrax and Mantis as a double act. Two very funny characters. But also there's like, it's quite sweet. This is a whole kind of meaning of Christmas thing, which could have been saccharine, but I guess with sort of James Gunn's dark humour, it stops it being saccharine, but it is quite sweet and nice. And also there's some genuinely moving bits. So yeah, I feel that it's like the Guardians flavour might be the Marvel sauce turned up, but they managed to get it all to work together quite well, considering this is only 45 minutes, so it's not that long.
Well, yeah, I think James Gunn's personal style, which is this sort of very sincere emotions punctuated by occasional grim jokes, or at least undercutting jokes, which is very much on display here, yes. He sort of goes emotional and then undercuts it repeatedly throughout the special, before eventually building to a big emotional peak at the end. And yeah, it more or less works. It's more Guardians, it reminds us why we like these characters. I felt it was maybe slightly lightweight. I perhaps felt like I did watch about 30 minutes of story stretched out to 45, but I don't know, it's got some nice festive trappings, especially the comedy song at the start, which I appreciated. Quite a few big good jokes, and yeah, he does crucially successfully nail the big warm Christmassy bit at the end, which is important, I think, and by Christmas special standards, that's probably a win. You can let people be a bit indulgent at Christmas. I mean, to be honest, it's a bit stretched out, but he nails the emotion at the end. There's also a fair review of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, so nothing is not consistent.
Yeah. And, you can kind of tell the beats that this is heading for, as they come, and it's got a sort of, people learn the meaning of Christmas and have like a nice sort of family moment at the end. So it's like, I don't know, there's no particular surprises along the way.
Yeah, no, it doesn't break the mold in any way, but the character-specific stuff is good. Kevin Bacon's version of his guest role, his sort of clever, self-aware version of himself, wasn't the most ingenious version of this kind of cameo ever, but it was still a fun time. And somehow the Drax joke remains funny. They're really getting a lot out of that.
Well, now they've got Drax and Mantis as a sort of double act. They both sort of don't really understand anything normal, I suppose. But yeah, they kind of work quite well as two characters together, and that's kind of the comedy core of this film. I mean, the biggest chunk of it is like the middle act, I suppose, which is them on Earth trying to kidnap Kevin Bacon as a present for Quill, because he loved Kevin Bacon films when he was like a kid. And the fact they get, everything wrong, it's a classic bungled crime thing almost, like, it's a bit Lady Killers or Welcome to Collinwood or something like that, and that's a kind of the core bit of the film that's quite funny, and then you've got like the sweet bit on the end, and that's kind of it, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's good to see Mantis get some more spotlight. That character probably needed a bit more time. She perhaps didn't get the most development in her first appearance in Guardians 2, so yeah, a bit more Mantis time's probably for the best before we possibly wrap it all up in the third film. And it was nice to see, the others get a bit to do. I mean, clearly, there's a bit of budget consciousness at play here in that they don't want to have all the characters, especially the very CGI or makeup heavy ones, on screen all the time. So, there's not that much Groot, there's not that much Nebula, there's not that much Rocket, but nonetheless, it's nice to see them when they show up.
There's just, they get a kind of small moment each just so that they can be there. Usually punctuated by a joke, or sort of almost like a comedy skit. There's a bit with Rocket Raccoon and a psychic dog that is supposed to be Laika from the Soviet space program. I mean, that's just thrown in there just to be a bit weird and silly. But yeah, again, I don't know. It is like, I guess, a holiday comedy special. So yeah, everyone turns up, gets a little joke moment.
Yeah, no, it's sweet, it's fun. It's probably going to be better remembered than the Star Wars holiday special. I imagine maybe there were some references to that in this, which I'm not a big enough Star Wars fan to get.
Well, the name itself is probably
Apart
the
from
biggest
the name,
reference.
yes.
Yeah. It's just, yeah. But yeah, and the fact that it's got there's songs that it's based around. I mean, music has always been a big part of the Guardians, again, flavour, the way they throw in old songs. This one opens with Fairy Tale New York playing. I believe the band that you appear once at the beginning, once at the end, are an actual famous American band, just with lots of makeup on them to make them look like they fit in the Guardians universe, although I don't think I'm aware of their musical stuff. I believe that is a cameo.
Probably.
Yeah, but yeah, music is a big part of the Guardians' identity, and yeah, there's various Christmas songs thrown in here as well, making it kind of a musical special, including 2 songs that are performed live. And I guess that's also linking to the Star Wars holiday special, was also amongst its many unforgivable sins was making a musical for some reason.
Nice. And there were some animated bits at the beginning and end, little flashbacks to young Peter Quill and Yondu, which was quite nice.
Very much picking up the emotional tone of the end of Guardians 2. I felt, which again, that's the point when Guardians of the Galaxy, they can be, this possibly sillier than an Iron Man film, or, certainly Black Panther, which we talked about in our previous review, saying how it's almost devoid of the quips and humour. So Guardians is almost sillier, funnier, but also weirdly can really, really do the emotional moments. I mean, there's a big emotional moment at the end of both the first and second one that's really is quite stirring. And this one, although not quite reaching that height, I do feel the kind of, again, the father-son bit, I guess adopted father-son relationship bit they have right at the end. It is generally that's that's got me in my cynical heart.
Yeah, no, as I say, this did the business. It made me feel the warm and fuzzies for this Christmas season. We could have covered it about 2 or 3 episodes ago, I think, but, we thought we'd save it for the actual, vaguely festive era. And it was nice to get a bit of raw Christmas injected in.
I mean, it's a kind of preview for the film that's coming out next year, I suppose, so... I assume they shot this at the same time.
Probably, yeah. But, I can appreciate them not turning it into an obvious trailer.
Yeah.
There's no obvious setting up of plot. I'm assuming the one character point that is revealed in this about the relationship between 2 characters, talking around the spoiler just in case, because I don't feel any need to spoil it, is probably going to come into play in the next Guardians film. So it is nice to give it that little bit so it doesn't feel like it's completely throwaway. But yeah, it doesn't feel like a trailer or a preview.
No, exactly, yeah. Yeah, there's some really good bits. I mean, I thought Chris Pratt, though he's in this less, he still is a kind of great emotional core for, this kind of Guardian story. There's a bit when, after they've kidnapped Kevin Bacon, they've decked out the whole base thing that they're living in Christmas lights. And then Peter Quill wanders in and he just looks... he has a moment of wow, this is beautiful, and Christmas memories. And, he really kind of catches that kind of childlike enthusiasm for Christmas. And then when they bring up a human-sized present that starts shouting, there's a great moment when you can see on the character's face, he goes from kind of joy to kind of, oh guys, what have you done, and it kind of transforms quite quickly. And I thought there was again, it's just a really good moment of acting from Chris Pratt.
Yeah, again, that's the sort of beat that James Gunn really likes, the sort of this is sweet, this is sweet, this is, oh god. Which he uses a lot, and again possibly slightly overused in Guardians 2, but they do work when he does them here.
Yeah.
And yes, I also watched the trailer for Guardians 3. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, obviously we watched that straight away afterwards. That's a kind of small dessert. Yeah, my main takeaway though, we did actually reveal how low budget the special was, because I guess the big film kind of looked much flashier.
Well, inevitably, yeah.
But it does look good, and I'm excited for that film. So tune in with us at some point in 2023 for our opinions on that.
Yep. In the meantime, this is finished. This also concludes Marvel Phase 4, so that's over.
Oh, right. The phase without a direction or overall.
Yes, the vague phase of just setting stuff up for the next phase. From WandaVision to here, it's now over. Phase 5 begins with whatever comes first in 2023, either the Ant-Man film or some TV show, I don't know.
All right, well, tune in for our opinions on that. Yeah, I guess our overall opinion of Phase 4 was, I don't know, there was some good stuff, if though it was inconsistent as a whole.
Yeah, pretty much. There was about as many really good things as other phases, I think. There's just a few things which were maybe a bit more inconsistent, yeah. The general tone of it's all basically decent, or it's all basically good, maybe wavered a bit. There were some things which didn't perhaps quite always hit the level of basically good. Cough, Falcon and Winter Soldier. Cough, Eternals. Cough. So, because we're not a terrible clickbait journalism site, we're not going to do 20 minutes now on how Marvel is doomed. Sorry.
No. There was a few things we summarised in quite well as they came out of the oven before they were done. Maybe they're stretching themselves too far with the sheer amount of stuff they have to deliver. Yeah,
they haven't announced quite as many TV shows for the upcoming years, so maybe they're scaling it back a bit. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see.
That's all we have time for in this MFV sort of Christmas special. If you've enjoyed this episode of Moderate Fantasy Violence, then please leave us a review in your podcatcher of choice, so that others can find out about the show. If you want more from us, then you can visit our website, moderatefantasyviolence.com, where you can find other episodes of the podcast, bonus audio clips, and short written pieces by Nick and myself, including, probably soon, our end-of-year articles that we usually do.
Yes, my top 10 TV. I should at some point start writing that. But yes, as well as that website, you can also follow us on social media, where we are at MFV Podcast on Twitter and Moderate Fantasy Violence on Facebook, where we occasionally post about podcast admin, our opinions on various culture, who knows what else. Maybe there'll be a Christmas message, you never know. And you can also follow me for slightly more regular postings at NickMB on Twitter, nickbryan.com on Instagram, and yeah, I'm also on a few of the various post-Twitter sites that exist. I think I'm at Nick Bryan on Hive, if you have Hive, but who knows which ones of these will actually survive the cull.
Yeah, I'm not on Hive yet, but you can follow me on Twitter, where I'm at Alistair J. R. Ball, and you can get more of my writing at redtrainblog.com. You can also join us here next time for our annual Review of the Year episode, where we will be counting down the best film and TV of 2022 and trying to decide on our official MFV favourite film and TV of the year. So join us in 2 weeks' time for that. Until then, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Bye-bye.